And we are back with the roundtable. I'm joined by our chief political analyst, Matthew Dowd. Katie Walsh-Shields, she served as deputy chief of staff in the Trump White House, now advising his super PAC, America First Priorities. Roland Martin, host and managing editor of News One Now. Democratic strategist, former Clinton campaign advisor Karen Finney. And Brian Kilmeade, the co-host of Fox and Friends, also has a new book out, Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans. You see it right there. Welcome to all of you. Matthew, let me begin with you. So we're all in a bit of a quandary right now. We don't know exactly what Robert Mueller has done, but it's pretty clear that it's real now.
Yeah, another boring week in politics as it unfolds. I mean, I think the whole thing, it's totally dependent on who this person is, right? And we have no idea. It could go in any different direction. The conversation was it could be big, it could be little, it could be the start of abating somebody bigger. We have no idea. And we have no idea what his game plan is in the course of this and whether it finally reaches Donald Trump. It's not a good thing, obviously, for any White House to have to deal with this kind of thing. Anything like this takes them off their game, takes them off where they want to go, takes them off any message they want on tax cuts or tax reform or anything like that. So we'll see it unfold, but it does guarantee one thing, I think, that this is going to go far into 2018, which is problematic for the Republicans to have an investigation going on.
And Katie, you left the White House before this really heated up, before this investigation really heated up. But is it your sense now that they figured out a way to compartmentalize the investigation, as the Clinton administration had to learn to do in his second term?
Yeah, absolutely. They're focused on tax cuts. I mean, that's what they tell you, and that's what we see up on the Hill, and that's what we see coming out of the White House. I mean, they're going to make sure they deliver tax cuts to the American public, and I think that you're going to see the president hasn't spoken about this in the last 48 hours since this apparent leak has come out that there'll be something on Monday, and I think you'll see the White House continue to talk about helping the American public, not about Russia.
We have seen that discipline from the president. In fact, he just tweeted about Obamacare, but not about the Russian investigation. But earlier in the week, Karen Finney, you did see a lot of these questions and tweets from the president saying collusion now between the Clintons and the Russians. And also, we did learn that the Clintons' lawyer, Mark Elias, did fund this Fusion GPS dossier.
Well, but that dossier came from an American company that had originally been funded by Republicans, as you had mentioned earlier. I think what's important, though, is less who funded it and what was in the dossier. And as you heard Adam Schiff just talking about, I mean, a number of the things in the dossier have been verified. But regardless, I think, again, with this announcement about Mueller, what's important is that we also know that there are multiple other reasons that there's an investigation. I mean, there is this question of obstruction of justice in the firing of Jim Comey. There are these questions about Carter Page and Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort and their communications and meetings with the Russians. We also learned this week that Cambridge Analytica, the company that was basically the data company for the campaign, reached out to Julian Assange of WikiLeaks. We also learned this week, I mean, this is the other problem of this investigation. The more it goes on, we learn it keeps growing, and that is part of the problem. As we also learned that some folks at the Kremlin actually weighed in on the memo that was part of the June 16 memo.
That was the New York Times report, Brian Kilmeade. I guess the bottom line there is that, according to the Democrats, this is not fake news.
Right. Well, there's a lot there. First off, to your question, I think if someone's marched in Monday, tomorrow, and it is something to do directly with the campaign, I think it's one thing. Number two, if it's something about Paul Manafort and what he did in the Ukraine before Donald Trump was even a candidate, then people will say, my goodness, is this going to be widespread? And is this going to be confusing? And it's going to be a rough shot, grape shot, looked at in the entire battlefield. So, to the GPS situation, we found out it's not a candidate. We found out it was Paul Singer and his Free Beacon. We found out that he was only looking at two candidates in particular, and he stopped the investigation as soon as Donald Trump locked up the nomination. As soon as he did that, he goes, okay, let's see what happens from the Republican perspective. Then we find out that somebody else picks up this investigation, makes it international. It has a Russian element. There was no Russian element to the Free Beacon financed opposition research. That's a major difference. And then we're supposed to believe that John Podesta had no idea that $6 to $9 million is flying out of the campaign. He said he didn't know. And his lawyer, when he's saying he didn't know, Mark Elias says, oh, yeah, I actually approve that. So you're the lawyer sitting next to a client who's pretending he doesn't know. That's unbelievable.
I just want to, as Karen knows and probably Roland knows, I've been highly critical of Hillary Clinton for a long period of time and all of the manifestations of everything that's.
I think all of us know that. Not just me and Karen.
But I have to say, we need to give out the David Copperfield or Harry Houdini Award for misdirection in this thing. This reminds me of the uranium deal whole story, which has been debunked all along the way. Yeah. This is a whole nother story. There is no similarity between what Robert Mueller's investigation and collusion and what the Russians wanted to do and a dossier paid for in part by the Democrats in order of
Matt, why would you think that? There's no, the FBI indictments could have been handed out.
There's no Russian relationship between the dossier and the Democrats.
Here is what is laughable. We literally watch a campaign of folks chant, "Lock her up," that we cannot have a president under investigation. And we are here right now. This is the real test as to whether or not Republicans will actually put patriotism above partisanship. Will conservative media folks actually speak truth or want to defend Trump at any and all cost? I love it how people are complaining about players who take a knee in the flag, but then want to excuse what Russia has done. That is the real issue here, and what Mueller is doing what a prosecutor should do, get to the truth. Remember, Whitewater started with one thing and ended with another. This is what happens when you go through a federal investigation.
Katie, why do you think that patriotism has something to do with admitting Trump's wrong? He doesn't think he doesn't think he's wrong.
Brian,
they don't believe he's wrong. There's no evidence he is wrong. So what is patriotic about saying somebody's wrong?
Brian, this is a guy who will knowingly lie and not admit the truth. So whether he says that is irrelevant to me. The bottom line is this here: when you have a foreign country that is clearly, undeniably, was involved in our election, not just once. No. 1 second. Excuse me. I'm not talking just about that. I'm speaking of Facebook ads. I'm speaking of bots. I'm speaking of all of that. All Americans should want the answer and not.
And then let's get a fact. Brian, let Karen get in here.
There's one other thing, though. There's a pattern that we've seen time and time again in this administration. You'll see the president tweet about or say, this week it was, we need to, release all of Hillary's emails, and we need to, kind of throwing the smokescreen back on Hillary. By the way, at some point, Donald Trump is going to have to be accountable for Donald Trump and actually being the president.
She's on the book tour that never ends.
But then what ends up happening is, and I had just before the news broke on Friday that Mueller was, is close to actually bringing charges, I thought, what is it that's about to come out? Because this pattern we've seen before, every time there is about to be a new revelation in this investigation, leading right into that, we've got all this blowing of smoke and, it's about Hillary, or, Obama wiretapped me in the, in Trump Tower.
So you saw it coming.
But Karen, of course. You have it absolutely reversed. What happened over the last 2 or 3 days? Revelations now are out thanks to Fusion GPS coming forward prior to releasing their tax records, saying that they were financed No, they didn't, because it was denied. It was denied by John Podesta. It was denied by the DNC chairman.
Let me No, I have to finish. In Vegas. Two shows in Vegas. Misdirection.
No, I have to finish. No, you got to let me finish. I'm sorry if you're frustrated.
I'm not frustrated.
But just calm down.
The truth is important,
the truth and timeline is actually important. All right, so let me finish, and I will tell you the facts. You ready for the facts? The facts is Tuesday, Wednesday, we get the revelations because GPS did not want to hand over their records about who financed their international probe in Trump Tower, into Russia. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, it turns out $3.6 million from the Democrats. Let me finish. And then $6 million from Hillary Clinton's campaign, which he never admitted to.
I want to get too fast.
So this happens. And then all of a sudden,
filibustering spin.
And then so all of a sudden,
it's pretty cute, Brian.
It actually I do consider myself cute. So
Brian, hold on a second. I'm stopping this.
So,
wait.
Thank you.
There are two facts about the dossier that we know. We know that it had nothing to do with the intelligence community's findings that Russia interfered with the election.
That's exactly
Absolutely nothing to do with that. And number two, we know that nothing in the dossier came out during the campaign, so it had no effect on the campaign.
Let me add one other fact. Every single intelligence agency said not only did the Russia interfere in our election, they were interfering on behalf to get Donald Trump elected and Hillary Clinton defeated. The argument that has to be made on the dossier is that somehow Hillary Clinton and the Democrats contributed to her own defeat by what the Russians wanted by doing that.
Okay, we got to take a quick break. When we come back.